right. So good night, everybody. Welcome to Churches in Action, our presentation of domestic or gender-based violence and youth. Before we start, I just want to put down some ground rules, which basically is that we ask all persons to mute their mic so that we wouldn't get any distortions. Also, there is a link that was shared on the chat, which you could click on, and you could join our Facebook Live. Okay, great. All right. So let me just give you a brief synopsis on what and who is Churches in Action. Churches in Action Foundation is a representative body of over 10 full gospel churches in the enterprise community. Our vision is to establish enterprise as a model community in Trinidad and Tobago. What we want to do is to reach out to persons of every age, gender, and ethnicity in enterprise with hearts of compassion, service, and prayer. We also want to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and his saving grace to the persons of enterprise. So this is one way of ensuring that enterprise is what we want it to be. This is our gender-based violence webinar. We have with us tonight our Member of Parliament representing Chaguanas East, Ms. Vandana Mohit. Ms. Mohit is a 31-year-old Trinidadian who resides in the village of Cunupia, located in the borough of Chaguanas. She obtained both primary and secondary level education and attended Hindu Girls College, where she graduated as the valedictorian and receiver of the Good Citizenship Award. She is a fruit of a community-focused family. At the age of 16, she entered tertiary level education at the College of Science and Technology and Applied Arts of Trinidad and Tobago, COSTAT, where she pursued an associate degree in journalism, public relations, and a Bachelor's of Art degree in mass communication, both of which she graduated. 1 year later, at age 22, she made a life-changing decision to enter the field of politics with a successful beginning, being elected the local government representative councillor for the electoral district of Cunupia. Passionate about success and education has always been a key factor. At the age of 24, she pursued a Master of Arts degree in mass communication, which she recently graduated from. In 2020, she was hosted to the shoulders of the constituents of Chaguanas East, who elected her as Member of Parliament. Ms. Mohit serves in the House of Representatives as a proud lobbyist and voice for the people she serves and grew up with. She is a passionate advocate for social and humanitarian issues, including gender equality and women's rights. This is Ms. Vandana Mohit, MP for Chaguanas East. Next on our panel, we have Pastor Michael Prince.
Debbie, we are not hearing you.
Not hearing me. Sorry. Okay, so next on our panel and our moderator for tonight is Pastor Michael Prince. Pastor Michael Prince was baptized in July 1989 at the age of 32 years. His educational background includes a first degree in Bible theology, master's degree in counseling. He's currently pursuing a doctorate in leadership and social change. He is currently ministering as the pastor of the Enterprise Pentecostal Breakthrough House and currently serves as the vice president of student affairs of the West Indies School of Theology. He also currently serves as a lecturer and coordinator of psychology and counseling program at WIS. Other ministerial information, he's also a youth director of PAWI and also serves as a private secondary school teacher and later as a principal. He is also a clinical counselor at a drug rehabilitation center for teens. His mission statement is to pursue the leading of the Holy Spirit and to be equipped with the most current and relevant information and techniques and demonstration thereof. This is Pastor Michael Prince. Next on our panel, we have Inspector Lystra Bridgelal. Inspector Lystra Bridgelal is a police attached to the Gender-Based Violence Unit and worked in the Southwestern Division for the Organized Crime, Narcotics, and Firearm Bureau, which has been renamed SIU, Special Investigation Unit. Inspector Bridgelal currently works, as was stated previously, as the Gender-Based Unit. She holds a first degree in Information Systems and Management and also a diploma in Business Administration and is currently pursuing her master's in Business Administration. Next, we will have who will be joining us a bit later is Miss Onica Maz. She indicated that she is currently in our next session, but she will be with us shortly. Miss Maz. And are you all hearing me? I think I lost. Okay.
Yes, we are. Go ahead. Debbie, we are not hearing you now. You can proceed.
Okay. So Ms. Onica Maz is a survivor of domestic violence and abuse. Who is now committed and is now committed and is an advocate for domestic violence. She would have won a National Gold Medal Award in 2019, creating awareness through educating, since she firmly believes that the conversation must start so that this secret can be exposed and therefore diminished in our society. And we definitely see why she is one of our panelists here tonight. Onica motivates, informs, and empowers victims and survivors and remind them that they are bigger than the abuse they experience and they are not their struggles. Ms. Mars is the founder of Sit and Chair with Onica Mars, a domestic violence support group, which was launched in October 2016, and also founder and president of a nonprofit organization, Woman of Substance, which was birthed on March 24th, 2017 from the support group. The Sit and Chat support group allows victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse to meet and share their experiences with each other in a safe, professional environment with professional counselors and psychologists. Ms. Mars is also the founder of the Purple Bench Project, and she will elaborate more when she gets on. So tonight, again, I welcome you to Churches in Action Foundation, Gender-Based Violence and Youth. I now hand over to our moderator, Pastor Michael Prince. Pastor Prince.
All right, so thank you very much. And we want to welcome all of you who have joined us this evening right here on Zoom and who have joined us on social media. I think this is a very important topic, and we don't want to just make it into another talk shop, but really want it to be one that we can impact individuals, find solutions, and make a difference. So I really want to firstly thank Churches in Action for having me as a part of this initiative and to drop me right in the center of three dynamic women, which I really appreciate the privilege to interact with our MP, Ms. Mohit, with Inspector Bridgelal, and with Ms. Mars, and she did indicate that she is on. So we have the opportunity to have her at the start. If I can probably take the opportunity on behalf of all the decent, right-thinking men of Trinidad and Tobago and all those that are listening, if it is all possible, to extend an apology for how men have treated women in particular. And I know gender-based violence is broader than women, but they are, the percentages show that a significant amount of women have been abused by the hands of men. And I know statistics will probably come up a little later on, but if it is possible, you know, and want to partner with all those who are involved in the education, the transformation of lives that we can reduce. I remember reading a document that one of the World Organization groups wants to see the reduction or the removal of gender-based violence come 2030. And I think that might be one of the questions I will throw to these wonderful people, but we really want to make a change. The director for Women's Issues, United Nations, said that particularly domestic violence and gender-based violence is a shadow pandemic. And I think long before COVID, it has been a pandemic. And what we want to do tonight is take the opportunity to kind of kick the ball off, that each one of us will get to share about 3 minutes, something that hits home for us in relation to the whole issue of gender-based violence, and then we'll kind of throw some questions around and see what are some of the answers, and later on we're going to also receive questions from those that are on the platform, as well as those that are on Facebook. And I probably want to start it off deliberately, probably from the outside in, probably dealing with it from a psychological perspective, and I'll probably just take about 2 minutes to kind of throw some stuff at us. Then I would probably want to hear the policy aspect of it, so to invite Minister Mohit just to give us a sense of appreciation from a policy, from a government standpoint, parliament standpoint, what has been happening in relation to gender-based violence. Also to have Inspector Bridgelal kind of share with us from the police service what has been happening from the statistical aspects of it in relation. I read last week our acting commissioner was sharing that there was approximately 24 women that were killed over during the course of this year, and I think that number has gone up during this last week. You know, I pulled out that from one of the daily newspapers. So you have that, and then getting down to the personal experience in relation to gender-based violence. So if I can, let me probably kick it off. We all have an appreciation of our own exposure as to what domestic violence and gender-based violence is. It's any type of violence that is rooted in the exploiting or unequal power between genders. And generally it seems to be a domination experience where you have individuals who, because of not being able to function critically, may use violence, may use control as the primary means of responding to their situation. And they would always look for somebody that may be vulnerable or weaker in order to express that on. And a lot of times it is on women, it is on children. We notice that it appears in different forms. It appears physically, it appears psychologically, it appears emotionally, economically, socially, even religiously, and even financially, that there are all these aspects of abuse that take place. One writer notes that about 95% of persons who experience abuse will experience a multiple forms of abuse. So it's not just one aspect of abuse. They would always, 95% of persons will receive more than one, psychological, physical, to name a few. What are some of the driving forces that, from a psychological side, that we normally identify? One big one is the social or the cultural norms. What we have accepted as certain behavior of men. Men are macho, men are the ones in control, and there is that kind of pressure that existed there. and even what I mentioned before, where individuals do not have the proper regulation, self-control to manage or negotiate their feelings. And they react in outbursts, they react in violence. There is a micro and a macro slant to gender-based violence. The macro view is how the society reinforces it. And oftentimes you hear individuals, and I remember some years ago, a young lady was killed right after Carnival. And the first set of comments that came out was that of, because of how she dressed, she looked for it. And I think that that is one of the most defeating statements that could come from that. And then you have the micro thing where a lot of people are not necessarily only when it hits home that gender-based violence is relevant. And we often have this, and probably this will be my last point, that we always have to be mindful of the transgenerational impact, where it moves from one generation to another generation, because individuals become oriented. Yes, you have those individuals who move to a different dimension and say that I'm not going to treat my spouse like that, but then you have those who repeat the same behaviors that they have seen in their family of origin. They now establish it in their own families, and we recognize that some individuals who are perpetrators were victims in the first instance. So a lot has to be done, both from a psychological aspect as well as a social aspect, to transform our environment, that we can really make an impact. Let me probably pass the baton on to Minister Mohit. Tell us what, and probably add to what you would have prepared, what has been some of the strides coming from a parliamentary environment?
Well, first of all, good evening, and thank you all so much, to our moderator and distinguished panelists, and of course, all of the persons, joining us on this Churches in Action Foundation webinar. And I believe that, there's no better time than now where such an event is taking place. Over the last 6 to 8 months or so, and I'm sure Inspector Bridgelal would agree with me, the levels of reporting in terms of domestic gender-based violence, it has been a critical issue within the households, and within vulnerable households, I must say. And arising out of this COVID-19 pandemic, in many households, if the situations in terms of violence have not worsened, they would have developed during this period of time. So such an event, I must commend you first of all, and state that I'm happy to be a part of this. And in addition to that, to know that, I've been working with some of the women who are on this webinar series this afternoon, working tirelessly with some of them to ensure that we assist within vulnerable households so that we don't have worsening situations, or we can cut short a developing situation within, particular communities. And I must say, in terms of the focus in enterprise, it has been going well. And, you know, I'm very happy to state that just before this event, we would have gone to a female's home to deliver some furniture where she has 3 kids all by herself. So, you know, helping women and developing women and families are all a part of, you know, dealing with the issue of gender-based violence, domestic violence, issues being faced by women in general. In terms of, I know you're very excited to hear about the parliamentary perspective. And I'm very, very sure that, of course, you all would be following after the brutal murder of young Barrett and others, you know, Ashanti Riley and all of these young women. You would have seen that there was a more of a reactive measure. And we must blame all of us, you know, all of ourselves for that, because of the fact that for a long period of time, these things have been happening. But of course, you know, it had to get a little worse for us to really push forward. And in monitoring, we would have seen the pepper spray legislation. But as it relates to policy, what I would say as a young woman myself, you know, very, very passionate about serving my community and communities surrounding in which I was elected to serve, what I would say is that whilst policy is important, the existing authorities, it's very, very crucial for us to work with them. And apart from existing authorities, the community groups are also very, very important. You know, just today, whilst I was preparing for this, and you know, I was looking at the various forms of legislation, because I know you would have preferred me to deal with that aspect of it. You know, the pepper spray legislation, it was passed, you know, collectively. And of course, we are still awaiting regulations. But all of these things are still due to a qualification process. So hence the reason I'm saying you can have all of the legislation, the various authorities and community groups in terms of religious bodies, etc. You play the most critical role. And one of the most important policies that I think should really be implemented in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think it would really help, is the National Strategic Plan for Domestic Violence, Gender-Based Violence. The reason being, you know, from the ministerial perspective, or even TTPS, you would have so many reporting streams in terms of reports being produced, statistics, etc. But as I have said before, you know, the police do their job and they give us the statistics. What do we do with the statistics? And hence the reason I'm mentioning the strategic plan, because there needs to exist a strong relationship with the school system, the social services system, the gender ministry, the TTPS, the religious bodies, the community groups, so that you have direct liaison. And there needs to be a continuous liaison with these groups. I must say that in the community of enterprise, from my day, from the very first time I became a counselor to now, the transformation that I have seen, it's amazing. And this transformation came as a result of the liaison with the community groups and religious bodies in enterprise. So in terms of policy, I see this as a major, major, major factor. And, you know, and I see it as a major program in terms of dealing with gender-based violence as well as domestic violence. Of course, you know, in terms of my own exposure, I would share with you that I have never seen situations that I'm seeing during this pandemic ever before in the time, during the period that I have served community, served nationally. I have never seen situations like I see existing now. And on a daily basis, by the minute, we have to find ways to deal with these situations. And these situations involve women, a lot of our women. And I must say, women, we are a sensitive creature. And how you deal with us, you must be very careful. But I must say that, you know, we also need men, and men play a critical role as well. And we must, in dealing with various situations, we must not always say that men are fully responsible. We play a role as well as women. So it goes both ways. And with this being said, I go into another form of, policy or liaison in terms of authorities. And one thing, and I saw it today just after I mentioned it, in terms of family planning, the general perception of family planning in Trinidad and Tobago is that you are worked with to note how many kids you should have in terms of the numbers in your family. But a major factor in terms of dealing with gender-based violence and domestic violence is the expansion of the family planning units that we have in Trinidad and Tobago to work with couples, not only in terms of the numbers in their families, but helping them to deal with situations, helping them to understand each other so that they know how to move forward in their life, how to deal with problems within their households. So it does not develop into a violent situation, which may possibly lead to death in the long run. So the expansion of these units are very, very critical. And the liaison in terms of the police, etc., it has to be a tightly knitted, bonded relationship among these agencies when you speak expansion. Because when you speak expansion in terms of such a critical issue, you really, really are looking for a tightly knitted relationship, a strong bond, because you cannot afford for any cracks there. And
if I can probably ask, and definitely we're going to have some time for solutions, and I realize you started to unpack some solutions, but if we can hear from the inspector, kind of get the whole perspective in, and I love what is being said, and we really want to look at that. But if we can look at some of the challenges first, and then we build on the solutions coming down, and I think that will be the nice package for us this evening.
Sure.
So thank you very much.
Yes, I was about to wrap up. Sorry about that. Yes.
that's all right. But we want to probably take those solutions in a nice summary for everybody, so it will be able to hit home. Let's invite Inspector Bridgelal just to share with us from the perspective of the police service what has been happening, and then we are followed by the personal experience of Ms. Mars.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here in this most esteemed panel. Okay, firstly of all, I'm sure most of you all are familiar with the gender-based violence unit. And what has happened over a period of time is this was launched in January of 2020 by our then Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffith. Now, the gender-based violence unit is always something relatively new because we are still in the embryonic stages. We are operational in 9 divisions within Trinidad and Tobago. So we have divisions starting from Western Division, Port of Spain. We have Eastern, Northern, Northeastern Division, and then down to South Central, Southwestern Division, and we also have Tobago. Now, the mandate of the gender-based violence unit is to treat domestic violence. Now, treating domestic violence is a big social issue, as well as it's a criminal issue. Traditionally, we used to treat domestic violence as a family issue, where persons would go and counsel out domestic violence situations. Now, domestic violence, as Mr. Prince had said, is a physical, financial, social, psychosocial aspect, whereby the person who is being violated can experience any one of these things. Now, there are offenses attached to this domestic violence issue. Domestic violence comes with a range of other offenses, hence the intervention of the police in terms of bringing perpetrators to the courts to deal with in accordance with the fullest extent of the law if offenses are established, right? There are offenses ranging from assault by beating, kidnapping, false imprisonment. We have had murders, we have had attempted murders, we have had assault, occasion, and actual bodily harm, and a wide variety of offenses. Now, you all had spoke about a multidisciplinary approach as well. So in addition to the police bringing forth evidence before the court to arrest and charge perpetrators, we also have the psychosocial support. We also have the external agencies, and we have, as Ms. Mohit had said, we have a combined experience with all these different agencies so we can provide all of the counseling and all of these social support that will assist a domestic violence victim into a sort of a rehabilitation process, because it is a big social issue. And based on the COVID-19 pandemic, it has reared its ugly head even further. The challenge is great, and we are continuing our mandate together with police officers and civilian officers. Because while we understand the need for offenders to be charged, we also understand the need for preventive work within the community, and that is very important. So our stakeholders have to be included, and we facilitate domestic violence victims in this form and fashion, right? What has happened over the period of time? You all had mentioned statistics. What happened is we have brought before the court more than 400 persons since the inception of the unit, which is the 21st of January 2020. And we have brought forward more than 500 charges, right, based on those persons arrested. So we have announced our arrival. We have also provided, together with our other stakeholders, with the Office of the Prime Minister, Children's Authority, Victim and Witness Support Unit, and other stakeholders, we have provided the facility for victims, safe houses for victims, so that they will be in a better comfort zone, so they can get that safe atmosphere they can function in. So we are doing a lot of things, and well, like you said, it's a panel discussion, so it's just this is just the introduction of what we will discuss. But we ensure that both the victim and the perpetrators are dealt with on an ongoing basis, right, by the issuance of protection orders as well. And there are consequences for breaching protection orders. We also assist the perpetrators as well as the victims in understanding the roles and the relationships that they have and how we can work towards healthy conflict resolution. So there are different aspects to deal with domestic violence. There are also policies whereby the police assist in transporting victims to a place of safety, right? Or the shelter that we spoke about, with the location that is remaining unknown to the perpetrators. So we are the gender-based violence unit. We are doing a lot of big things. We are trying to keep our head above water in respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. The social issue is there. A lot of persons in the community, by and large, in Trinidad and Tobago have joined our mandate. We are very appreciative of that. We look forward to continued support. So that's the introduction. You all feel free during the course of the panel discussion. We'll ask any questions to clarify anything. And thank you very much. Over to you, Pastor.
Yeah, thank you. And we go straight to Ms. Mans.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Good night to the panel. My introduction is that as a survivor of domestic violence and abuse, I would say intimate partner violence being a subset of domestic violence and abuse. Most people think that domestic violence is a personal or private family matter, and they choose not to get involved. But what I want persons to know is that domestic violence and intimate partner violence is everybody's business. It is no longer my business or your business, as it affects and tear away the very fabric of the community, because I know the theme is domestic violence and the community and you, right? And domestic violence and abuse, gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, it destroys the family unit, and this causes a ripple effect on and repercussions that are felt for many years. I am excited to be a part of this discussion, as tomorrow, God's willing, I am going to be celebrating 13 years of freedom, 13 years of running away from an abusive relationship with my then 4- and 5-year-old children. So basically, that is my introduction in the essence of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And definitely, I know our time is limited, and there's so much that we can talk about in relation. And I know what Ms. Marcia said is just a pinhead, fit on a pinhead compared to her entire experience. I probably want to throw this first question to the panel. Is gender-based violence seen as an important topic to the masses? Do we see it as something that people are really interested in? I know we have the few and the collect pockets of individuals, but are we really, as a people, as a community, as a nation, are we really serious about this?
If I may answer that, I would say no, because as I said in my introduction, most people see domestic violence, gender-based violence, intimate violence as private matters. And most times when persons are being affected, people tend to, as bystanders, look on and take a hands-off approach, because sometimes they don't know exactly how to treat with the issue because it's a sensitive issue. And some persons in our society normalize the behavior, the violent behavior. Hence the reason why I would say it is not given much attention, it is not prioritized. For me as a survivor who is very, very, very passionate about advocacy and assisting women or persons affected by domestic violence and abuse, I would say it's not given the priority and the attention it should be given, or that is required as a matter of fact.
Thank you. Minister Mohit, Ms. Bridgelal, what are your thoughts?
Just to add to what Ms. Mars has been saying, yes and no, because based on our intervention strategies, as it were, we have started to sensitize the public on what gender-based violence is. So we have started to reach out to persons, the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, by doing lectures, by making ourselves available. We changed the mandate a little bit. We are liaising with the external stakeholders. We liaising with Children's Authority. We liaising with the counselors, the persons in the community, and all of that. So whilst it may start off as that, and I totally agree, based on our mandate, we continuing and we are making inroads into this because we get the support and the victims are in fact coming forward. It may not be in great numbers as we do expect, but based on our intervention and based on the services that we provide in conjunction with other persons and based on the results they are getting, I think they are having more faith in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the other stakeholders like the Office of the Prime Minister. And we have had positive reviews. Sometimes victims come back and say, hey, the police has helped us. We are ongoing in a rehabilitative process. We do understand, Ms. Mars, that we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do still, but I think that we are making inroads and more people are joining in the fight against domestic violence.
Thank you very much. Minister Mohit, any thoughts on that?
Of course, whilst I've listened to, both females very attentively, and their points are extremely strong in terms of what they are advocating for, as well as, the general reality of the situation. I think that, over the last year or so, the issue of gender-based violence and domestic violence, it is being taken much more seriously as compared to before. And, I think a lot more of attention is being placed into it. And as Ms. Bridgelal indicated, yes, persons are coming forward. Even in my case as a representative, persons are coming forward. They want the necessary assistance, etc. But what I think is important, before I complete quickly, is that more success stories, just like Ms. Mars, there's need for it to be publicized. Yes, cases are very, very sensitive, but screened and, publicizing success stories can help women who are afraid to come forward so that, the issue is dealt with on a larger scale.
Thank you very much. And even as a pastor, sometimes we are not as eager to deal with these things. Even on the pulpit, they still seem to be, and we think that everybody in the pews is good. And we really don't even sometimes tackle these issues within a church environment. And I think a lot of pastors now, years ago, if a woman particularly was experiencing abuse by her partner, back in the day, you might have had a pastor saying, we will pray, go back and be obedient to your husband. And that was the environment then. But when you read in the papers how many individuals, how many women are being killed, we are not as eager to put ourselves in that position to say stay in the relationship, for the fact now that we're recognizing that it is out of hand. Even from the police service perspective, we've often heard, I've often heard, it's difficult for police officers to really intervene in different domestic scenarios because, and I read a report in one of the daily newspapers that a woman that a man was charged for abuse, and the woman got up in the court and said she's not pressing charges. What does that do within the police service, or even Ms. Mohit, what does that do within the legislative environment when you see these kind of situations happening where women are recanting their statements, and again, you have different challenges where the economic, the man might be the only breadwinner in the home, so it's better take my licks and keep quiet rather than cause trouble. What comes and probably Ms. Mars can help us also with that from her interaction with other women. What are the challenges that happen there?
The thing is, it is important to understand the cycle of abuse, right? And when we hear a woman standing in the court and saying, I no longer want to press charges, there may be a lot of contributory factors to her saying that. One of the major ones might be fear that the perpetrator may attack her, because what we know is that the perpetrators often say that the restraining order or the protection order is just a piece of paper. I really want to applaud the gender-based violence unit for the excellent job that they have been doing thus far, right? I am based in Tobago. I have an excellent relationship with the officers here, and we work hand in hand. Also we have a good, my organization has a good relationship with the officers in Trinidad. What we need to do is create the awareness, continuous awareness, because understanding the cycle of abuse and what it does to the person who is affected, one would understand why that person would stand and say, I no longer want to press charges, because there are so many factors, as I mentioned before. So then what we need to do, educate, 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 educate and empower. So once we do that, then we have the persons affected understand how detrimental it is if the police gets involved and you now stand and say, I no longer wish to press charges. Once the person affected understands that, you know what, there are support systems in place, the police is there willing to offer support, there are NGOs like Women of Substance, there are persons, there are support systems. Once we have that, once we make that known, then we could help persons who are affected to understand that preservation of life is key, and we need to allow the police to continue to do what they have to do.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything to add from the other ladies?
Well, guess what? A lot of times victims come to the police and they come and they make their report of domestic violence. Sometimes it entails very serious offenses. Sometimes they are hospitalized. Sometimes they have broken bones. Sometimes they have bloody faces. So they don't recover from these things. Sometimes it's an assault by beating, so they have a bruise on their hand. We had one instance where the victim came and she made a report and she didn't want any further police action, but it is our responsibility to continue the investigation until the end. So the victim comes, gives a statement, and then comes back 2 days after and say, ma'am, I don't want to pursue this matter, you know, because I feel that me and my boyfriend have reconciled, and based on the situation now, I feel I can cope with things. Now we have a situation like that. We have situations whereby the victim ends up in the hospital. We had a situation where the victim ended up in the hospital and the perpetrator had beaten her with an axe. And then he threatened to go and bury her in the middle of the night. And then she woke up and she saw him hovering over her and he was dressed in black, right? And she spent a good few days in the hospital before he was charged. We have different situations. We have situations where they are charged and they don't want to pursue it further in the court. We have situations where the perpetrator is arrested and charged and brought successfully to the court and is successfully convicted. We have what the police do. The police keep on assisting the victim with the transition if they move to safe houses. The police keep on assisting the victim by doing welfare checks. We don't just arrest and charge the perpetrator and leave it right there and follow up when the matter finishes at the court. Sometimes, like Ms. Mars said, they are re-victims. A lot of times they are re-offenders. They come back and they do the same thing again. There's a cycle. The victim is traumatized, so they are facing a new normal. They normalize everything. They get beaten on a Monday. They try to justify things. We understand the trauma. They try to justify things. It is my fault. He loved me, you know, because he brought flowers for me on Friday. And then after he come back and he asked me to make a cup of coffee, very normal in the morning after he beat me the day before. These things happen. These things are real. It happens so many times. It happens across the board. It happens to people lower middle class. It happens to professionals. It happens to everybody. It happens, right? So what we do as police officers is we deal with it on a case-by-case basis. If the matter goes successfully to the court, excellent. But during this time with the victim, If we are offering the victim, male or female, psychosocial support, we offer them a safe house. Unfortunately, a safe house is a temporary measure. We have to understand they are leaving their comfort and safety of their home. Sometimes they are leaving a financially comfortable situation. Sometimes they have children and they are worried about their children. If they go in a safe house for 3 months, what happens after that? What happens if the perpetrator is arrested, goes before the court, he is jailed, and he comes back out 3 months after? So we have to follow up with a protection order.
But what does that do for the police officer? I think sometimes, you know, it could be overwhelming. I've chatted with 1 or 2 police officers, and sometimes the challenge even for them that I am trying to help you. I'm trying to ensure your safety, and you're coming back and it feels like a slap in the face. How do you all manage that? I know you mentioned about the persistence. How is it managed for you all within the service?
Sometimes it is daunting, right? Sometimes it is daunting when you see a victim continuously go back into a situation and the offender reoffends him or her. Well, the majority of times is women, right? Whether we like it or not, that's how the statistics are, right? Under 10% of the domestic violence victims are male. So a lot of times we refer to domestic violence victims predominantly as females, right? But we treat the males as the same. We tend to report the same way. But when these things happen, sometimes officers are daunted, but we are trained a certain way. So by being trained, every time a victim makes a report, the police respond because we understand the trauma. Sometimes they're not ready. Sometimes they are not ready to come forward. Sometimes they are doubting themselves. Sometimes it's a big change. It's a big step to make a report to the station and then go forward with it to the court. So we understand that. So every time they make a report, all of the services that the police can facilitate in conjunction with the other agencies, we do that. A lot of times we are successful in bringing the matter before the court. Quite a number of times, but not mostly, but quite a number of times we have a successful rehabilitation. That is excellent. Sometimes we have to go back in the situation again. So it depends on the on the scenario.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to switch gears a little bit and probably Minister Mohit, when we were talking about policies earlier on and legislation, and you know, one thing occurred to me is that you could have as much legislation as you want, but if there's no change in behavior, it becomes futile. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Is legislation the be all and end all, or there has to be? And I know you started alluding to it, and you can probably elaborate on some of the strategies that you were going to present earlier on. And probably a follow-up question is: are we more focused on symptoms rather than on the root of the problem?
Well, basically what we've just listened to, they were very strong contributions, is reasoning, success, as well as challenges on the road to success. So you see how the system works. Now, in my humble opinion, the police legislation, and why I said you can have how much legislation, behavior is important, and the liaison with the various authorities, etc., is very, very crucial. Legislation is really a consequence faced by a person for an action. And it's a lot of pressure, as I mentioned before, on the police, backs. And that is something very difficult, because the police having to implement and execute is really when the situation, it has reached the worst points in various situations. So, and which is something we don't want, hence the reason, as Deborah Jeffrey, Miss Mars, Miss Bridgelal, all of us would try to do what we can in our very own space. And there are many others like us, within our beloved country. So, you know, hence earlier I would have mentioned that the strategic plan from the education system come all the way up. So our men, they are taught how to treat a woman, how to react to situations, how to deal with family life, how to deal with the lack of opportunities when you have a family, how to deal with the lack of finances, etc. Right? How you work with your partner versus fighting with your partner, how you deal with situations so that you do not reach the police service for you to have to, you know, get a bad stamp, as we say, on your passport. All right. So it's a very, very touchy situation with different, you know, developments, with different challenges being faced by different households, by different agencies. And each situation requires a different reaction and a different scenario in terms of how you deal with it. So that is why I'm saying legislation, it's really a consequence. It starts from the education system, come right up. Hence the reason there's need for a plan, strategic plan.
Excellent, excellent. There are two questions that are posed by the audience. One is, what are the support systems that are available? I know we alluded to it. I know we have halfway houses, shelters, counseling, and one person asked concerning what is support systems for men, not just men as perpetrators, but men as victims. I know it's a very small population, but what systems exist for men who are experiencing domestic violence?
Okay, so if I may contribute to that,
Everybody waiting for everybody else to answer.
There are organizations such as Carryman, Caribbean Male Network. I know Mr. Kevin Liverpool and Dr. Peter Waller, they assist and provide support for men who are victims of intimate partner violence, domestic violence and abuse. In Tobago, there is B-Men, Michael Stewart, they also provide support. The thing about it is that it is not like known on a large scale, the support for men, because we hardly have men coming forward because of the ego and because of them being seen in a particular light. If they come forward to make a report, you know, so, but those are the services I know, the support systems I know that are available for men.
Okay. And definitely those are important, and even from religious environment, I think we also need to capitalize on what the church, the mandir, the temple, all of our religious bodies, that we recognize that yes, there has to be support systems created within these groups for the community that could help support men. I think one of the things that from my sphere as a counselor, we recognize is that men aren't as eager to come forward, a little more, they're willing to come forward, I think, a little more now than before, because of the public ridicule. You're going to be called a sissy, you're going to be calling, you hear all these stories even where men will go into the police station, and this is back in the day, and in some cases they feel dejected, what wrong with you at all, and you know they leave the police station worse off, you know. So you had those kind of situation. We have a comment from London, Melissa coming from London, and I think Inspector Bridgelal did indicate that once the evidence is there, once enough evidence is there, that a prosecution can go forward without the witness coming forward. I think that is what you had mentioned, Inspector Bridgelal.
Well, Pastor, just to clarify the question, I'm not seeing it in the chat, but what
No,
was the
it's
actual
coming
question?
directly to me.
All right. Okay,
So
well,
Melissa on Facebook stated in London, once the police have evidence, they proceed with a case without the woman's testimony. That's how
all
it's
right.
written.
All right, well, that happens. Yeah, that happens, but sometimes there's a point of being cross-examined. So sometimes
Okay.
you call back the victim to be cross-examined in court. So the process is that if a report is made to the gender-based violence unit or any station, the police records the report. Point of being cross-examined. So this is that if a report is made. I'm getting some feedback there.
Yeah, I heard a little bit of feedback as well. But you go right ahead. I don't
All
think
right.
it was.
Right. So once the report is made to the station, any police station or the gender-based violence unit, the police officer will record the report. Then after interview the victim, observe if there are any bruises or any signs of injuries. A statement is recorded. The injuries, the scene is visited where the offense had happened, and then the injuries are photographed by our CSI persons. When the injuries are photographed, if it's an urgent case, they go to the hospital or the medical facility and obtain a medical certificate, which the doctor writes, right? So a medical practitioner or a doctor writes a medical certificate. So we use the statement, the photographs, and the medical certificate as evidence to present before the court. If there are independent witnesses, we get statements from the independent witnesses as well, that is persons who may have seen what had happened. Right, so we have that. If there are weapons to be seized, we seize the weapons, we exhibit it. That is also evidence for the courts. In terms of sexual offenses, their clothing and all of that we need to preserve as evidence as well. Further medical examination. If it's a situation where it's a very serious domestic violence, the police have the authority to go in, enter the premises without a warrant. If it's a serious, dire circumstance, the police have that power as well. Once the matter reaches before the court, the matter, well, now we are doing virtual hearings, so the matter goes before the court and the evidence is presented. If the victim will have to testify in some instances, the victim will have to testify, especially in terms of a protection order, they will have to answer certain things for the magistrate or the family court judge to determine whether a protection order should be obtained. And in terms of a matter before the court, they will be called upon to give evidence or cross-examine if there are any doubts or any issues that needs to be clarified. So yes, they will have to go in some instances.
Okay, great. Let me probably throw one more question at you coming from the audience. The training of officers. Are officers, how are they trained, or are they adequately trained to deal with these issues, domestic violence, intimate partner violence? What kind of training exists for officers?
All right, it's a good question. With the inception of gender-based violence unit, we also started a training initiative to train our officers because we recognize the need for the training because our domestic violence victim is a different victim in terms of crime. And the reason why a domestic violence victim is different is because when a crime is committed in terms of domestic violence with the different offenses that I explained before, a lot of times the victim has to return to the offender, return to the environment with the offender, because sometimes they share a marital relationship or a spousal relationship, or they have children involved. So it's one of the categories of offenses, right, whereby the victim continues to have interaction with the suspect. So in that form and fashion, our officers have been trained in dealing with trauma. Our officers have also been trained in dealing with domestic violence victims and understanding the thinking and the type of support that they need. So we are sensitive towards the victims. We have adopted a victim-centered approach whereby we treat victims in such a way that they are comfortable. We show sensitivity in addition to obtaining the evidence to bring the matters before the court, right? So we also interact to provide safe houses if that is necessary. We engage child protection unit if there are children involved and further crime issues has happened, or if the children require removal from the home based on reasons for lack of care, or they are being interfered with, or any other different offenses under the Children's Act. So yes, our officers are trained, and the good news is that it's a continuous training process. So we are competent, and we are on the road to being more competent. So we are out on the field, and that is where we are at right now. So yes, it's a continuous process.
Probably if I would add, one of the things from a clinical point, once we identify individuals who are experiencing issues of intimate partner violence, we go through the helping process, and it can be from supporting, encouraging, empowering, as well as identifying even action plan, developing a safety plan. There are different techniques. There's a 10-step technique that we work with individuals as it relates to helping an individual, even asking the hard question. If you leave, what is the implication? Or if you stay, what is the implication? I think for some individuals, they never take the time, they respond to the present. If everything is going good, okay, we're happy, everything is all right. But then when that aspect comes, I remember a person sharing in a public forum where she had to run out of the house with her children in her duster in the middle of the night and seeking help. And we're now asking the question, are you prepared? You know, you need to develop, and there are different things that we would normally share in how an individual develop those plans. We are starting, I think, to encourage our young women, or women who have not as yet get into relationship, really think seriously about pre-relational screening. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about love and being attracted to the person that we don't, and this might be a sore point for in some circles, that it's not that we're putting the blame on the woman, but I think sometimes, and probably you all can help me with this, there are some individuals who walk in eyes wide shut into relationships that everybody else is seeing that, hey, this isn't the way to go. What could be said to these young women? Open your eyes.
And this is where the education comes in. If we have age-appropriate information shared with as early as the kindergarten level, then from an early age, they know what to expect, or what a healthy relationship looks like. Because the reality is that our children have been exposed to toxic environments.
Yep.
They may not have had the adults to teach them what a healthy relationship looks like. So then, yes, as parents, we have a responsibility. But if they are being exposed, then, I mean, the schools, we have the other stakeholders, have continuous education programs, awareness programs. And before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, my organization started an awareness program, and you know, I really want to say thank you to MP Mohit, you know, who really supported us, welcomed us into Trinidad, into Chaguanas with open arms, right? And we started a Purple Bench campaign, a domestic violence awareness campaign, right? And I mean, as soon as stuff is lifted and we reopen, you know, we are going to be back at it because we recognize the importance, right? So my thing is continuous awareness programs, education. Education is key, because if our children are exposed to this toxic environment, children learn what they see.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How are their behaviors expected to change if what they see is violence?
Yeah.
So we have a responsibility as a society to educate.
Definitely we do.
Go ahead, go right ahead.
Yeah, definitely we do, because in addition to that, the youth clubs play a very important part of it, because what we have to do is encourage our young ladies to engage in more wholesome activities. And the fact that they don't really need, you should not have a man to validate you, right? So if you are not reliant on that to boost your self-esteem, then it goes a long way. And if you are engaging in these type of things, or if you're seeing it coming out of a family or like the environment, like what Miss Mars has said, the environment is going to teach you different things. And men and women are socialized in different ways. So women will react to things differently to men. And this is very, very important in bringing up our young ladies. And what they learn and what they accept is how people will treat them. So they need to be proud and confident, educate themselves, and to be aware of things that are happening outside there, and do not stand for less than the best.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make a contribution before we go on. I always say, if we teach our males to respect our females, we don't need to fight up to teach our, you know, we hear people talking about self-defense and all that. I have no problems with self-defense. But if we teach our young men how to respect our young women, we don't have to teach our young women how to defend themselves
against.
Right? So it is, you know, it is work, and we need all hands on deck, because the church has a role to play.
Yes.
The teachers, the parents, the community, because domestic violence and abuse affects everybody.
Yes.
You know, so we have a responsibility.
Yeah. I think that's why I would have mentioned that you have the macro situation as the micro. We always study the micro aspect to gender-based violence, that it makes it personal, as Minister Mohit said earlier on. But we also have to say that it affects all of us. It may not happen to you personally, but because it exists, your children might be maybe victims of it. And if you don't deal with it now, and I love what you just said there, and even what the scripture says, that and let me probably even extend into this, that the older women teach the younger women, and the older men teach the younger men. And I think that there's where the gap lies, is that we have a lot of work to do to have, because we have older persons probably experiencing violence themselves, they don't know what to transmit it to the younger ones. And this is where we have the stopgap with all the policies, with the training and whatnot. Let me probably wind down and ask for closing contribution, but I want to start us off with this. The United Nations Population Fund has planned world eradication of gender-based violence by 2030. Are we going to meet that timetable? And probably let me throw in this as well, that and November is an excellent time for us to have the discussion, because the 25th of November is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, the 25th of December, that we can partner and celebrate that we want to see gender-based violence eliminated. The UNFPA has given it 2030 is our clock on mark. Minister Mohit, are we going to get to 2030 with the eradication of gender-based violence?
We can get to a good point by 2030. You know, with the works of ladies like Miss Mars, Miss Bridgelal, Miss Jeffrey, yourself, your organization, other organizations like yours, you know, once everyone keep focus and we work towards this particular goal, we can. But also, we must also remember that with everything that you plan, in the world that we live in, funding is necessary. So I think once we have the proper plans, once we have the you know, sufficient funding for the necessary plans, we can get somewhere, you know, by 2030. Because of the fact that we must always remember that domestic violence, gender-based violence, can lead or will lead to child abuse, will lead to worst of situations within households, within countries, within regions. Hence the reason that planning, provision of funding, and commitment is necessary if we are to get there by 2030.
Thank you very much. Inspector Bridgelal, are we going to get there by 2030?
Domestic violence can never be eradicated, right? It's a big social issue. And as far as we are concerned, we have a lot of work to do. So we are moving forward. So once we have the community outreach programs, the necessary social worker interventions, we have the aspect of the police service and the law aspect from a worldwide perspective, the same thing. Once the awareness of the gender inequality and its effect on gender-based violence is also promoted, that is going to assist us in coming close to that. But remember, traditionally, domestic violence was treated a particular way. We are well on our way, you know, but we still have so much work to do. So with the necessary awareness programs and people joining in the mandate, people have to buy into this whole aspect of eradicating gender-based violence. And once we have that buy-in and that support from all our stakeholders, and it transcends from local to national to regional to international, then we are achieving our mandate. So we have begun the journey and we have a lot of work to do. And we need the support of women as well as men, very importantly, men. So once we do that, we're on the right track.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mars?
According to God's word, the heart of man is desperately wicked, right? So
Yes.
Because of that, we know, because I am a believer, right? I understand the spiritual aspect of violence and abuse, right? So what we need to do is address the root causes. And once we address the root cause, then, and of course, you know, with God's intervention, we could get there.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Are there any closing thoughts by any of you? I really enjoyed our conversation, the interaction. I think it is important, and it has to be something that is ongoing, because there are still individuals that are out there that may seem to be oblivious and still think that it doesn't affect me. That we need to continue to herald the cry, to make that call that we all need to partner together at every level, from the religious sector, the social sector, the government sectors, the police service. All of these groups really need to come together to ensure, yes, and definitely once you're dealing with human beings and domestic violence, gender-based violence, this is not something that happened yesterday or the day before. This has been around centuries, and it's not something that is going to just disappear just like that. But we need to do as much as we can to mitigate, to educate, to empower, to transform. Any closing thoughts before we hand over to Ms. Jeffrey?
Just there's two aspects of things. Firstly, I didn't think we dealt with it enough, but male victims of domestic violence, feel free to come to the station or gender-based violence unit to make any reports of domestic violence. We have a zero tolerance approach, and the investigations are done the same way. We understand the conversations, we understand the refrains, we understand that sometimes a man is very much physically stronger than a woman, so sometimes they are embarrassed. We would urge you, if you know somebody who is being violated, please let them know that we understand that sometimes when you make reports, they are treated with less than sensitivity. But based on the education drive, we are dealing with it better and better and better. So, and to the general public, please be minded of the signs of domestic violence. Sometimes we have domestic violence victims and you don't know. Look at the signs of bruises. Look at the persons who are retreating into their own shell. Look at the aspect of bystander intervention. If you can do something to prevent this social disease. If you see something, say something, report it at the station. You could report it anonymously. You don't have to be a hero. If you see something happening, you could call 999. You could call any police station. You could make a report. Don't tolerate it, because if you tolerate domestic violence, it's going to get into a bigger and a bigger problem. So we as a society, we as Trinidad and Tobago, let us fight it by reporting it, dealing with it, treating with it in all aspects, all genders, across all social aspects of life.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so go ahead.
My final contribution,
Yes.
sorry. Domestic violence and abuse has been ingrained in our culture, right? The Bible tells us that one can chase 1,000 and two can put 10,000 to flight. So let us come together. If two can put 10,000 to flight, can you imagine what maybe 60,000 of us can do? We need all hands on deck. We need to understand the dynamics of domestic violence and abuse and its effect, the domino effect on society and, well, communities and societies by extension. So what we need to do is be our brothers and sisters keepers. Let us not judge. The society is already judgmental. If somebody trusts us enough to come and share the experience with us, let us offer them support, right? Let us offer support and let us be the change that we want to see. So instead of sitting back and saying the police not doing anything, or the government not doing anything, or the NGOs not doing anything, let us ask ourselves, what am I doing? How can I become a change agent? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Mohit? You need to put on your mic.
My apologies, yes. In closing, just to state that persons saying so females and males get out, I don't think that's the answer. That's just a reactive measure. Whereas we should really and truly, as Ms. Mars said, be our brothers and sisters keeper and see how we can assist. And in addition to that, to our sisters and to our brothers, to our mothers and fathers, because there are senior persons who also face issues of gender-based violence. It's never too late to ask for help, and it's never too late to look for those who are offering help. And there's no reason to be ashamed of being a victim of violence, whether it be gender-based or any other forms. There's no reason to be ashamed. It's always better to put pride aside, put ego aside, ask for assistance, and one day be a success story.
Thank you very much. And I know a lot more can be said, so we say thank you to the Honourable MP, Ms. Mohit, to Inspector Bridgelal, and to Ms. Mars. I say thank you very much for making my job easy, because you all had quite a lot to say that could educate, that could empower, and if we had more time, we could have continued. I don't know if for the organizers, CIA may have to have a part 2, because a question just came on the platform. I don't think I would want to venture for us to entertain it, but it's really about how we work with children in gender-based violence situations and domestic violence situations. How do we manage, how do we mitigate avoiding bitterness, all of those challenges. And even we hear, and I think it was alluded to by Inspector Bridgelal concerning if you see something, say something. You have a lot of parents who their hands are up in the air and they're hearing that their daughter is being abused, their son is being abused. What can I do? They don't want to say anything. They don't want to, and you could even have rifts in the family. So, those are things that are there. Definitely counseling and other measures are in place, and we really need to be a community and to be able to impact people. So this is just a whisper in somebody's ear that this might be the start of something that needs to unfold a little bit more. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as a moderator this evening, and we continue to partner together to make a difference. So I hand over now to Ms. Jeffrey. You need to put on your mic as well.
Thank you, Pastor Prince. Really excellent conversations we were having here tonight. I know the time is limited. Really want to thank our panelists, our esteemed panelists, MP Chaguanas East, Ms. Mohit, Inspector Bridgelal, Ms. Mars, and yourself. You really did an excellent job in educating us. And as Ms. Mars kept stressing tonight, we really need to be educated on domestic violence, gender-based violence, intimate violence, and how we could deal with it as a community, as the church. So it's all about collaborating to see if we could reach that mark in 2030. So we are working towards that. As this is just the first, who knows, maybe we might have a part 2 Again, I want to thank our esteemed panelists for tonight. Really educated us on gender-based violence, and you all be safe, stay safe, and all the best to you. All right, have a blessed night, everybody. Thank you.
As
Good
well.
night,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care. Good night.
Thanks so much.
All right, blessings to all. Thank you very much to the panel.